All of us have had defining moments in our lives and careers, and I want to talk about some of my defining moments. This happened when I was a medical student about 30 years ago, University of Southern California, and I was assigned in the emergency room to follow a young man who was a university student, college student there, who was hit by a car as it was crossing the street. Came in with a massive brain injury, and we had to perform a life-saving operation on him. However, despite saving his life, we could not help him with severe cognitive thinking deficits, as well as having severe movement problems. And it was very difficult to see at that point that we can't help him further. Despite saving his life, he has a lot of problems with his movements and thinking. And that really helped push me towards dedicating my career to study of neurosciences in the brain. Then over the next 20, 30 years, I start training with some of the experts in the world who've had the fortune of working with the pioneers developing new therapies in New York at New York University and then Cleveland Clinic and others. And my journey took me to many places, but fundamentally what was most important to me was an opportunity, the proper team, and also a calling in terms of helping with a team to make an impact. And that was an important driver, and I made some unexpected stops, but the reason we're at Morgantown in West Virginia is that I believe we have a unique team here that can make an impact. And many have come here over the past few years from across the world to make an impact here in West Virginia. So why is that important from perspective for neurological disorders? Brain and spine disorders are very common. They affect 1 billion people worldwide. Many of the conditions, we don't know why, we don't understand them, and many of the treatments don't work very well, and many don't have cures. And 50 million Americans have neurological conditions, a brain and spine condition, and it's imperative that we work together to help break the barriers, bridge the gaps, to help advance innovations in this area. So advancing science, there are many elements, breaking the barriers by scientific advances, but also you need to break the barriers, the silos that many of us are in our separate silos, working in different environments. You got to pull them together, and when they all come together, that can often lead to a powerful advancement, acceleration of progress and innovation by different disciplines talking to each other and coming together for a shared purpose. And I believe in West Virginia we're doing that for Alzheimer's now and treatments for addiction and other conditions. But this has been a fundamental element that's guided my career, is working with teams with a common purpose and a shared drive and commitment. Let's talk about some of the work. When I was at New York University and also Cleveland Clinic, I had the good fortune of working with teams in neurology and neurosurgery. At that time, a new technology was coming out. It's always important to adopt technologies quickly and try to help patients and find solutions. At that time, a new technology was the use of brain pacemaker. So a heart pacemaker was adapted for the brain. And basically, this technology was initially used for Parkinson's. It's called deep brain stimulation, DBS. And these are implants in the brain, tiny wires, size of a hair, that go into the brain. So instead of going to the heart, the wires go into the brain, different parts of the brain, and then signals are sent to the brain that stop the tremors, that stop the anxiety, and other applications. But the first application for our team was for Parkinson's disease in New York and Cleveland Clinic. And so here's an example, DBS. So in this case, the pacemaker is off. This is one of our patients from Cleveland many years ago. One of the initial patients has severe shaking, rigidity, stiffness, which are the hallmarks of Parkinson's disease. And these patients, despite taking many medications, had to stop his job and couldn't take care of himself or his family. And when you implant the pacemaker, what happens, calming signals are sent from the pacemaker into the brain, in the part of the brain that is electrically malfunctioning, causing the Parkinson's and the tremor. As a result, the tremor calms down, rigidity melts away, and the symptoms improve. So this was an application of an existing technology, working with engineers and other teams to apply this in Parkinson's. And this moved on over the next few years, where we were working with teams with clinical trials in epilepsy, and now it's FDA approved for epilepsy. So epilepsy is a brain electrical problem. It's a seizure in the brain, and a pacemaker calms that electrical chaos in the brain that causes the convulsions. It also was applied for obsessive compulsive disorder to reduce the anxiety leading to obsessions, and is also being used for traumatic brain injuries. These were teams coming together with applying a new technology of a brain pacemaker for these conditions. So the next area was when I was at Ohio State University and looking at brain-computer interface, a burgeoning fields that requires collaboration between engineers, public and private sectors. And what we did is we sat in a room, I remember 2012, with a lot of engineers from Battelle, clinicians and neuroscientists, and we said, okay, we're not going to leave here until we come up with a solution for a problem. And let's put all of our collective expertise together to help these patients. And our first area was looking at people with spinal cord injuries and having a motor deficits. So we came out together with a common purpose out of that meeting with a team of many engineers and many neuroscientists together to develop a solution for a brain-computer interface. And this is Ian, and he's a remarkable young man. So he was our volunteer, courageous young man. So Ian, he was a college student, very promising college career, very terrific person, and he was vacationing with his college buddies and dove into a shallow sandbar in the ocean and broke his neck. As a result, he became quadriplegic, so he could not move his arms or legs. He had no movements below his shoulder. And Ian is remarkable, and he's an inspiration. If you meet him, he inspires everybody around him, and he's very courageous. And he said, let's do this study. So he was the first in the world to participate in this trial involving a brain implant. So what happens, you put an implant in the brain, tiny chip, the size of a small pea. This goes on the part of the brain called the motor cortex, is involved in movements and the thoughts of movements. And this is a chip right there, you can see, and that chip is implanted in the brain, and there's a port that comes out of the back of the head, and you collect data. And you're looking at 3 million bits of data every second coming from Ian's brain, his thoughts linked to movements, his thoughts for other actions. And that's being recorded, decoded in this framework with signal processing experts, machine learning and analytics and artificial intelligence, and allows us to link Ian's thoughts to an external wearable sleeve that he wears that allows him to move his hands. So that's the technology, linking thoughts to movements. And this was the first time Ian, after 2 years, he's thinking about movements, and this was an amazing moment for us in 2014, where you can see he's using his thoughts and is moving his hands. And that was an amazing moment. You can see the smile on his face was an inspiration for all of us to push harder. So the engineers, we said, okay, moving of the hand is great, but we need more functional outcomes. Being able to pick up a cup, being able to take a credit card out of a wallet and swipe, or take a key, or to hold a toothbrush. And some of these basic things that we all take for granted, but somebody who is a quadriplegic cannot use and do that. And he even wanted to play video games. And here he is playing Guitar Hero using his thoughts, and that's an important example of a brain-computer interface with progressive improvements that are occurring from having no movements to these movements here. And this is the team here. Obviously, Ian is at the center, and he's a courageous hero who volunteered to be the first in the world to get this brain implant to allow him to move his own hands. And you can see this team involves many students. We had many undergraduates and graduate students. Many came up with great ideas. So the 2 or 3 physicians are a small part of the team. The engineers and the students were the biggest part of the team. And Ian participated actively. So with machine learning plasticity, Ian helped us enormously. So the young students, the creative minds are very important that allowed us to come up with many new ways of being able to help Ian to move better. So that's brain-computer interface. And this technology, with collaboration with public-private sectors, is leading to advancements of linking your thoughts to movements for those who have motor deficits from stroke, traumatic brain injury, and also being used for visual prosthetics, communication, and others. So imagine now you can use your thoughts to drive many movements and actions for somebody who's disabled. And that's a field of brain-computer interface and collaboration. Let's shift gears and talk about focused ultrasound. So you all know ultrasound is used to look at babies, and it's used to diagnose and look at heart conditions, and that's an ultrasound. But also the technological innovation that occurred was applying the ultrasound for treatments of brain conditions. And here's a engineering innovation that was quickly adopted for various conditions. First was tremor. So this technology, you're lying on an MRI table, a helmet comes over your head, and over 1,000 ultrasound probes deliver the ultrasound waves through your scalp, through your skull, directly to a pinpoint area in your brain, in this case an area that's electrically misfiring, causing the shaking. And these ultrasound waves calm the tremor area and shut it down. So that's an application of a focused ultrasound to treat the tremor. And this is not surgery, it's wireless ultrasound waves coming in an MRI. And this innovation now has been used. Here's an example of one of our patients. You can see before the procedure has got shaking, essential tremor, condition runs in families. On the right hand, after the ultrasound, immediately afterwards the tremor stops and the patients can go home. So an evolution in technology that's happened in terms of allowing you to use a wireless ultrasounds to treat tremors or Parkinson's. So what we did here with the team, we were looking at tackling some of the big public health challenges facing us, Alzheimer's, addiction. So we started looking at Alzheimer's, which is a big problem facing all of us. Every 60 seconds or so, someone gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's in this country, and there are 5 million people here living. All of us are sadly affected by somebody who has Alzheimer's disease, whether it's a friend or family or somebody we know. The numbers are going to triple, and there's no cure and there's no effective treatment. And despite 500 clinical trials and several $1 billion spent, Alzheimer's is continuing to progress, and 1 in 3 seniors sadly will die with some form of dementia or Alzheimer's disease. These are sobering statistics. So we really need to collaborate to find ways of dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia. So let me show you what we've done here with our study. So we're using this focused ultrasound, but a new application to open up the blood-brain barrier. What's the blood-brain barrier? It's part of the brain that is a shield in the brain. And this shield is a protective barrier, allows nutrients to come in and some waste to go out of the brain, but does not allow for germs or other larger molecules or harmful substances to come in, but also it also prevents medications to come in. So this is the problem. While it's protective shield, it prevents the immune system, immunotherapy, medications to get in. So that's the barrier that needs to be opened up. So what the ultrasound technology does, the goal of it is to open this blood-brain barrier reversibly and on demand. So what happens is that we use microbubbles, and these are tiny microbubbles that you inject into your intravenous system peripherally, into a vein, and these microbubbles create a leak in the brain. So when the microbubbles are being injected, they cross all over the body, and then the ultrasound is delivered to a specific pinpoint area, anywhere in the brain that we want to go. And when it's pinpoint that area, these microbubbles oscillate with different frequencies. And what do? They open up the blood-brain barrier temporarily and allows nutrients, allows chemotherapy and other medications to get in. So let's talk about how we're doing this for Alzheimer's patients. This is Judy. She's a remarkable woman, 61-year-old woman who is a nurse practitioner here in the neonatal ICU, and her career has been dedicated to taking care of infants and babies in the ICU here in West Virginia University. And she came down with Alzheimer's over time, and she could not work as a nurse anymore, despite being an educator and a tremendous person helping so many people. She still goes to the neonatal ICU and helps cuddle babies. So the babies from addicted mothers need to be cuddled. It's very important for the development of the brain, so she's still contributing. But she's a pioneer by participating in this first-in-the-world trial. And what we did with Judy, and this was first last October, we delivered ultrasound waves to the part of the brain called the hippocampus, which is the memory part of the brain. It's the part of the brain involved in memory and thinking. And here's the procedure. We're delivering the waves to open that blood-brain barrier. And many animal studies are showing that by opening it up, the plaques in the brain that are associated with Alzheimer's are cleared. And the symptoms of Alzheimer's in animal models are improved. So in this case with Judy, you can see that's her brain before. And after the ultrasound, you can see that arrow points to the tiny opening of the blood-brain barrier. And then 24 hours later, it's gone. And this is an important element because up to this point, opening the blood-brain barrier has been impossible safely and reversibly. And we think that this may cause many other advances. And here's an example of working closely with neuroradiologists, with engineers, with scientists, others. And advancements will be for targeted delivery of medications. Imagine if you have a brain tumor, typically 10 to 15% of the chemotherapy gets from the bloodstream to the brain. Now imagine if you can get 50% or more to get into the brain. Delivery of immunotherapy, antibodies into the nervous system, and many other aspects for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, brain tumors, and opioid addiction. And we think this is a very important technology, and it's being developed in partnerships with academic and private and public partnerships. So this team alignment and shared purpose, we showed that slide earlier, it's very important. So when the teams come together from different backgrounds, you can really accelerate innovation with a common purpose. And that's very important. And this is what our team is working very hard here. And here we are in terms of West Virginia, where there are many public health challenges here. And in the country has many, it's ranked last in many public health issues. But we think that in West Virginia, we have the opportunity here as well, by the various team and experts coming together to tackle some of the most pressing public health challenges. We talked about Alzheimer's, for example, another area working on addictions, which is ravaging the country, opioid addictions, and many other addictions. So our team has developed in collaboration with a public-private partnership, again, a micropellet, a tiny micropellet the size of a half grain of rice that's injected and delivers long-term pain control. So you don't need to take as much medications. And that's a solution to prevent opioid addiction at its root. We're also using magnetic waves and ultrasound waves to curb the cravings and the anxiety with addiction, to calm that down, to help those with addiction. We're also looking at recovery and resilience using wearable sensor technology, a watch or a ring or an app that's able to characterize resilience, human resilience and recovery for athletes and military. So there are many elements going on here, and it's all with collaboration of different teams coming together with a common shared purpose. And the team is very important, but Judy there in the center is the most important member of the team. So Judy is the pioneer, the person who inspires all of us, and she volunteered for this study to be the first in the world to do this, despite knowing that it may not work. Many of these clinical trials may not work. We have scientific rationale teams that come together. But people like Judy, people like Ian and others, and countless others who volunteer for these research innovations, they're the real heroes. They're the pioneers who are bringing the teams together, and together we can help work hard to advance these technologies. And we need to adopt technologies, but fundamentally the patient is the biggest driver every day for all of us. And it's important for different teams with different backgrounds to come together to accelerate the pace of innovation. Thank you very much.